food. Just before the COVID pandemic struck, the government had been preparing to launch its national food strategy, headed by Henry Dimbleby, owner of the Leon chain of restaurants. Its original purpose was to look at health, environment and food security, or how robust really our food system is. The last topic has been brought into sharp focus, of course, by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as Henry Dimbleby told Anna Hill this week, there are lessons to be learned.
Surplus or having some slack in the system is important, and the current system in peacetime, as it were, doesn't have that. So if you look at the worst possible thing probably that could have happened in this crisis is that during the Hungry Gap, the short straits closed down for some reason and we couldn't get food across. And in a climate crisis, if there was a failure of harvest, you can imagine countries closing their borders, as Indonesia did in 2008, and we would suddenly need to have a surplus capacity in our system. Now, the problem with a surplus is that if you're not careful, a surplus of food in peacetime looks like waste, because it's food you don't eat. So I think there are two approaches. One is to produce more food, but export more of that food. The second is, you couldn't have countenanced this just 2 months ago, but it may be that we need actually to hold some surplus of long life foods in case there is a crisis that leads to the shutting of the short straits and our complete separation. If you had a failure of harvest in Russia and North America simultaneously, the traditional wisdom would always be that we're a small country and we're rich and we'll be able to buy our way out of it. Can we rely on that argument anymore? Or have we realised, seeing this, that we need to be a little less complacent in terms of the way in which we perceive existential risk?
If you're saying to people, well, you have to rely on what the UK produces and, OK, we can produce a surplus and export that if we've got too much of it. But, people want diversity in food all the year round. They're used to it.
No, I think diversity is everything. I think we need to end up with a much more diverse system. We need more farms that are managed for their ecosystems in this country. And that's what ELMS is all about, the Environmental Land Management Scheme. But there will also be a place for highly productive in the old sense farms that spare land so we can use that to do other things. There needs to be a place for trade. We need to have the diversity. Now, the question, I think, what the government has realised in this crisis is that optimising only for efficiency is problematic. But the problem is it's the cheapest thing to do. That is what happens if you let the system optimise itself. So the really difficult question that we will have to ask and answer is, what forms of diversity are most important? And what are we willing to pay for them? The most efficient system would be to have Amazon be the only shop in the world serving all of us everything, and that would be probably the cheapest solution, but also catastrophic, dangerous, and very risky.
Are you then looking for a slightly different approach than you did before with the National Food Strategy?
I think there are two things. The first is, clearly, everything is going to be seen through this lens. I think the second thing is food security. I don't think we really would have been able to talk about that seriously with a full understanding of the existential risks. And I think even though actually the climate crisis may be the more important crisis for the food supply, for food security to bear, this crisis has enabled people to expand their imagination in terms of actually what this crazy planet of ours could throw at us.
Henry Dimbleby,